Jupiter at Night is filmed live before an internet audience, but I guess for about 98% of you, that doesn't really matter. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Jupiter at Night. My name is Chris.
And I'm Angela.
That's right. My wife, Angela, is joining me tonight. Jeremy is off doing some band rehearsal stuff, and Alan's out shooting a filming project. So the lady was kind enough to join me, so thank you. Now, tonight, we're going to do something that's a little unusual for Jupiter at Night. We're going to be talking about stuff that happened today. What? No, I know. That's usually what we do here at Jupiter at Night. But we took the news stories right out of the tech headlines today. I got some interesting ones. We've got a rundown of the largest social networks. Everybody talks about Facebook, but maybe Facebook isn't actually the largest social network, so we'll throw that number at you. Did you also know that the entire world is running out of helium?
No.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. And then, for the last 14 years, Stephen R. Jobs of Apple and Pixar and Disney and all that stuff has been trying to sell an old mansion of his. And there's been some reasons why it's been blocked over this time. And during this period, the curiosity of a certain reporter got away with him, and he broke in and took some interesting pictures. Now, I debated whether to cover this story or not because it seemed a little tabloidy. But the pictures were really kind of impressive and kind of creepy too.
Oh, I was gonna say, you mentioned creepy earlier, and I pictured like the Michael Jackson tour.
No, not creepy like that
like
kind of
scratches
creepy.
On a really small door that's hidden in a closet.
No, not that kind of creepy, but creepy like ghost kind of creepy. So we'll get to that, but why don't we get to this first story here, because I found this extremely interesting because it seems like social stories are in the news all the time. Everything about Twitter, everything about Facebook. But one of the stories that came out today from over on GigaOm's website that was an infographic they put together that really helps break down the different size of the social networks. And you can see that Gowalla and Brightkite and Foursquare, LinkedIn, all those ones are very small.
Where's Plurk?
It's not even on the list. I'm sorry.
Darn it.
Then you can see MySpace comes in at 126 million users. Gmail rocks in at...
Wait. Why is Gmail considered a social network?
Well, they're also considering some of the larger mail sites because they have some chatability and things like that.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you got Yahoo Mail at 284. Hotmail representing at 360 million users. And then the Facebook... 500 million users, but get this, ready for this one? This is the one that surprised me the most. Skype, 590 million users. Skype's actually the largest social network.
It's because people want to be able to call long distance without a cost, or with a flat cost, because isn't it like $20 a month for free long distance?
And in my BuzzFeed, some people say, well, yeah, we installed Skype like 5 years ago, and we've used it twice. I know some people don't use it that often.
Yeah.
But I know Skype is based on a proprietary protocol, but I think great instant messaging, great voice calls, does video calls, does file transfer reliably. It's a really good network. I was just surprised to see 590 million. That really jumped out at me because we're always talking about Facebook, or at least it seems like the internet's always talking about how big Facebook is, how big Twitter is. But, realistically, Twitter is even smaller than MySpace right now. Who knew? Who knew Twitter was smaller than MySpace?
That is really weird. Although, MySpace had a really big boom, and Twitter is
constantly growing. As
I've mentioned, I can't do it. I have the wrong kind of brain for it. It does not make sense to me.
Yeah,
I mean, I know how it works, but it seems too laborious.
That. It's very cluttered. You like threaded.
Yeah, I like organized, structured. Yeah. Yes. Did you see the biggest circle on there?
Well, it's just the big circle, isn't it? Just all the different networks.
It's mobile devices globally, which is interesting. It's 4.6 billion.
Right.
And so I wonder if all those added together, how it compares to that number.
Well, and I know, and if you look over here at the Facebook circle, they show that only a really small, little tiny, there's a black circle overlaid on top of the Facebook circle. If you're listening to the audio version, I apologize. This is not a great audio-friendly. We're looking at an infograph here, and the Facebook... The amount of Facebook users that use the mobile version is really small. They represent with a tiny black circle. So that's pretty interesting. So I thought I'd share that just because it puts a few things that we talk about in perspective. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I noticed Buzz also wasn't on there at all. I guess maybe it's included as part of Gmail. I don't know. One story I wanted to touch on, one real tech story before we get into the world running out of helium, is over the last, I don't know, last couple of days, this news story has been breaking, and it's really had my head spinning. Intel announces that they'll be purchasing McAfee, however you pronounce it, and for $7.6 billion. Now, McAfee, I think, made around $2 to $3 billion last year, so they paid way more than their actual market value was. And it's interesting, too, because what's Intel make? Processors.
Chips.
Yeah, chips. So what does a chip company want with antivirus, right?
Oh, well, they're going to require Microsoft to bundle it, Dell.
You
Dell
think so? They'll say if you want the Intel chip, you'll need to include it with the McAfee antivirus? Some people think they'll also integrate some sort of antivirus functionality at the processor level. So maybe at the processor, it can do virus scanning. I could see that being maybe important for phones, because if you look at these smartphones and they have all these applications, and you had Apple with their recent PDF vulnerability, and you've had potentially bad apps in the Android marketplace, and maybe the best way to work around all of these problems, all these inherent security problems, is to build antivirus in the very architecture of the phone.
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting play by Intel, but a lot of security analysts are coming out of the woodwork saying we just don't get this purchase.
I've never heard of a cell phone getting a virus.
There's been some rumors, or not rumors, but there's been some concepts of Trojans and things like that.
It's because they're Unix or Linux based, right?
They're typically I guess so, yeah. You have the Windows mobile phone that's based on a Windows core, but there's not really, the new Windows platform, Windows 7, isn't even really out yet. Linux and Unix, though, aren't invulnerable to viruses. They're just less likely to get them. But you could have a perfectly legitimate app that gets entered in the market. Well, not legitimate, but you could have an app in the marketplace that you don't know is a bad application you could download, and it could take over your phone. Usually, Apple's supposedly filtering for that, and Google's supposedly filtering for that, but you don't ever know. And so some people are saying this could be the new frontier where people will do these sort of malware attacks and really go after your device and your information and things like that. And that's why you'd want this kind of protection built in. I could see maybe making that sense, but still almost $8 billion on McAfee, which is not even that, in my opinion, not that good of antivirus. So I don't get it. But we'll see. I'll follow the story. All right. Now, help me wrap my head around this brain around this story that came out. Help me wrap a brain around this, Angela. This is the world is running out of helium.
Can I zoom in on this?
Well, I got it displayed here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So did you read this at all? This is a pretty crazy story. Did you even know we had helium reserves?
No.
I know, I didn't either.
No, but it sounds like a bomb material, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, they use it for all kinds of things, construction and all other sorts of types of stuff, cooling for construction machinery and things like that. And they use it for also defensive purposes. There is that aspect to it. It's not just for good things. But I guess the U.S., just like we have an oil reserve, has been keeping a massive helium reserve somewhere down by Texas.
Wow.
Do you want to take a pass at that story? You want to take a read at that?
Read it? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. The U.S. National Helium Reserve stores 1 billion cubic meters of helium, half the world's supply, in an old natural gas field. The array of pipes and mines runs 200 miles from Texas to Kansas. In the name of deficit reduction, we're selling it all off for cheap.
Yeah, this is interesting. The U.S. government, I think back in 97 or 96, started saying, you know what, we've got to make some money back, so let's start selling this helium to the private sector. So they had a privatized helium effort go into effect.
And that motivation was to sell it all by 2015, but the basic problem is that helium is too cheap. The Earth is 4.7 billion years old, and it has taken that long to accumulate our helium reserves, which will all dissipate in about 100 years.
Ooh. So it's taken 4.7 billion years to get the helium we have now, and now we're selling it off. And we're selling it off at a crazy low price. Yeah, that's pretty scary. I don't know what the ramifications are of this because I'm just starting to wrap my head around this. But we use helium from everything from party balloons to making our voice sound funny. So we've got to have helium. I mean, what happens if we lose helium? I don't know. I really don't know. Can we maybe send a ship out into space and pick up more helium? Is that doable? Can we just do that? Maybe we'll go.
No, I think we'd have to create some sort of contraption that pulls it out of the air. But I think helium, I don't remember the parts, but I think it's a really small...
I might throw this to the chat room. You might check. You might monitor the chat room for me. Okay. See if anybody says anything there, because I have got kind of a creepy story, everyone. Now, I did mention that we were going to talk about Steve Jobs' abandoned mansion. The backstory is Steve Jobs bought this place back in like the late 80s, early 90s, moved in, lived there for a period of time, and then decided that the house just was not in very good condition. It's a very old house. It's considered very early Spanish architecture. And because of this consideration, its historical nature, when Steve Jobs decided to either pick it up and move it or knock it down, there was an effort put in place to block that because it was of a historical importance. Now, that's been going on for, I think about 14 years. And the house is like 85 or so. Well, it was built in 1925. So there you go. You can do the math yourself. But check these pictures out. Here's the out. Now, this does get in the realm of creepy. I mean, right? Because we're talking about somebody's home. Now, he doesn't live there. He hasn't lived there for a really long time. But the lights are on, which I find interesting. And I don't know. You can see as the guy approaches it, it gets a little creepier. There's a little darkness around the window.
Looks like a haunted house.
It does look a little haunted. You ready to go inside? Now, audio people, I know this isn't of great benefit to you, so I'll describe it. Picture something from the movies, like an old Spanish home from the movies. Dirty and dark and run down and scary, with a huge, giant organ with dead flowers on the floor.
Weird. Inside
the house, and then giant organ pipes, like something from a huge church organ. I mean, look at the size of those organ pipes. And then they start moving in throughout the house. And they go into some of the rooms. And now remember, this has been abandoned for a little while.
Oh,
so it's not in very good condition. There's old chandeliers, old party rooms.
These look digitally remastered.
They might be slightly touched up coloring-wise, HDR-wise, and stuff like that, but these are legit. And it's just it's almost like post-apocalyptic kind of, like the bomb went off, or like when you see those pictures of the Chernobyl, you know, that Russian nuclear plant that they had to evacuate the whole town. And there's like weeds and plants growing inside the rooms through the windows.
Did he ever live there?
Yeah, he lived there for a period of time in the early 90s. It probably wasn't in this condition then. I mean, this has been sitting for 14 years.
Turn it into Flip This House, the chat room says.
Well, now that's the interesting thing, right? So the historical preservation people that were blocking the destruction of the house or the moving of the house, they wanted him to remodel it. Now, what Steve Jobs' lawyer said is that it would cost about $13.5 million to remodel it, and it would cost $5 million less to pick up the house, move it, and build a new house. And then interesting, the last picture I'll show here is an old TV with a VHS of The Godfather Part 2. Really weird stuff, right?
That's funny.
To me, it was so crazy to go through there and look at this. I don't know what it is, and I hate to be the kind of celebrity stalker person because I really don't have that kind of thing about Steve Jobs, but I do have, that could have been anybody's house that had been sitting for 14 years, and when it's a mansion like that with that sort of style to it, and it's not just like any old mansion, it's that early Spanish art style that really does it. It's an extremely interesting design. But anyways, I think that'll probably just wrap up about everything we were going to cover on this episode of Jupiter. Did the chat room have anything to chime in with before we signed off for the night? They do agree it's creepy, don't they?
A few things. Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that. That's funny. Yeah.
Looks like a psychopathic serial killer would live in.
I know, right?
He might not have killed anyone yet.
It is really creepy.
But I got the first part right. That's what it said.
It seems like maybe people broke in there and, I don't know, lived in there for a little while. Yeah. All right. Okay, everyone. Well, tune back in tomorrow night over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/live, or usually about a couple hours after that. 9 p.m. Pacific is when you'll find Jupiter at night. We'll be back tomorrow night with another episode. Probably, it's funny, we'll probably go from Jeremy and Alan being out to both being back and rocking the Jupiter night with us. So be sure to tune back in for that. And also, do us a favor. If you enjoy Jupiter night, please send it out, tweet it, link it, blog it, Facebook it. Whatever you
MySpace it.
Plurk it.
Yep. Plurk it.
Okay, everyone. Well, thanks so much for watching tonight's episode of Jupiter Night, and we'll see you tomorrow night.